revolution in attack aircraft design, the likes of which the world had never seen. Sleek, sophisticated, confounding enemy radar with lethal precision and speed.
You create such an element of surprise. You can now basically roam at will and attack the targets that you want to. You just don't have the time to respond.
An eerie, bat-like wing instantly recognizable as the shape of a dreaded stealth bomber.
If you could keep them from seeing you.
But this is not a modern invention.
It's amazing that of the technology that existed during the time frame, that they could come up with this type of a vehicle.
Almost half a century before the B-2 stealth bomber. This is the staggering Nazi innovation that almost changed the course of history.
The combination of speed and stealth was absolutely lethal.
An ingenious innovation, terrifyingly ahead of its time. In the final months of the Second World War, Allied forces sped across Germany in a desperate search. Intelligence reports hinted at a secret Nazi weapon that could change the outcome of the war. On the 14th of April 1945, troops from America's Third Army discovered a top-secret German base, hidden in a forest 160 kilometers northeast of Frankfurt. Inside, they uncovered an aircraft the likes of which they'd never seen before. A wooden jet fighter, the Horten 229.
The soldiers must have been stunned when those doors opened up, and for the first time they see this aircraft with its unearthly shape, something that no one had ever seen before, a jet engine powered wooden aircraft. It would have been impossible for them to clearly understand the magnitude or even the importance of what they had discovered.
At the end of the war, the Horten 229 and other advanced Nazi aircraft were quickly shipped back to America under Operation Seahorse. The Batwing fighter was reassembled, but its flying and stealth capabilities were never tested. For the last 6 decades, the only surviving Horten 229 has been locked away from prying eyes. Generations ahead of its time, the coveted Nazi war prize remains under tight security inside a government warehouse outside Washington, D.C. But was it really the world's first stealth attack aircraft? More than 60 years after it took to the skies, this innovative design is about to be put to an extraordinary test.
It's amazing that the Germans were that far along in World War II. It's amazing that of the technology that existed during the time frame, that they could come up with this type of a vehicle.
Stealth designer Tom Dobrins will lead a team of aerospace engineers from Northrop Grumman, the company that helped build America's modern stealth bomber, to make a full-scale replica of the Horten 229. The Nazi jet model will then be tested against Second World War era radar.
After the Battle of Britain, Goring came out and says, we need to find new flying machines. What we got now is ineffective. It wasn't ineffective. They had some good flying machines. It was the radar that destroyed them.
Most of what's known about the Tu-29 comes from aviation historian and writer David Myra, who interviewed its designers, Walter and Reimar Horton, before they died in the 1990s.
Okay, Aldo, diameter of the exhaust liner?
The aerospace engineers have been allowed access to the only surviving Tu-29 to take measurements. Incredibly, the jet was made almost entirely of wood.
Skin thickness.
If the veneered layers were designed to stop radar penetration, it means that the Nazis were pioneering stealth technology way back in 1944.
Was it truly something that they were trying to defeat a radar system? And that's going to be something we're going to try to find out.
They opened the investigation with a test on the original plywood skin.
This will help us determine whether energy is being absorbed or reflected, or maybe shielding the inside of the vehicle itself from energy.
A pair of radar-emitting probes focus electromagnetic energy against the plywood to see if that absorbs radar.
It seems like the surface itself isn't conductive, but it may be absorbing the signal.
So there's a good possibility that this could have been built as, if anything, maybe not even absorbing, but just possibly shielding.
The test confirms the Tu-29's plywood skin would have reduced its long-range visibility on radar, and it's not the only advanced stealth design feature.
It's got buried engines in the fuselage. All the surfaces are blended. You've got the carbon in the skin. You've got all these things. And then to say, were they thinking about radar? Well, everything points to that.
This is the modern shape of stealth, the American B-2 bomber. This expansive flying wing embodies both engineering elegance and all aspects of stealth. Although it spans almost 52 meters, its radar cross-section, the amount of electromagnetic energy it reflects back to a radar detector, is smaller than that of an eagle. To reduce its reflective signature, stealth aircraft like the B-2 rely on two critical factors: energy-absorbing materials and low-profile shapes that prevent radar signals bouncing back to the receiver.
Stealth technology doesn't make an aircraft invisible, but what it can do is dramatically reduce the detection range, making it much more difficult to defend against using fighters and anti-aircraft weapons.
Modern stealth aircraft began to be developed in the 1970s in high-security, top-secret American factories.
A lot of the things that we've been doing over the years, is kept in a cloak of secrecy. Most of the time, the things I work at Northrop are programs that I'm not allowed to talk about.
Much of that classified work continues at Northrop Grumman's Advanced Design and Manufacturing facility in Los Angeles. And it's here, amid the cutting-edge 21st century technology, that a full-scale copy of Nazi Germany's most advanced aircraft will be resurrected over the next 3 months. The full-scale replica will be built around a central body, flanked by a pair of outer wing panels.
Right now we're building the rotator, and
the model shop team begins assembling the sensor body from blueprints reproduced from the Horton brothers' original drawings.
Okay, let's stick it together.
They're using nails and glue, the same materials that held the original German prototype together. Both the shape and the materials used will have to be as similar to the original as possible.
Most of it is wood, and there's a few parts that are going to be made out of fiberglass. But the only metal parts are the rotator and the lifting points.
The model builders have spent their careers working on Northrop's most advanced stealth programs.
And they're not all the same.
They'll assemble the Horton 229 around a metal rotator that's been used to mount modern stealth machines on a radar testing range. These models are usually highly classified. For once, the stealth modelers are free to talk about the German design they're building around a rotator.
This rotator box was used on a different program, another classified program. I really can't tell you what it is, but it's seen its fair share of action.
When complete, the rotator will be used to attach the model to a pole 5 stories above the ground. Radar signals will be directed at the model to determine its stealth effectiveness. In Nazi Germany, stealthy, radar-evading aircraft were exactly what the Luftwaffe needed, after disastrous losses in one of the most pivotal battles of the entire war. In the summer of 1940, Hitler launched an unprecedented aerial attack to preempt the invasion of Britain. Nazi Air Supremo Hermann Goering was confident that the vastly outnumbered RAF would be brought to its knees. But the British defenders saw them coming.
What gave the British the defensive edge they needed was radar. This was a new technology that provided accurate range, altitude, and the numbers of German aircraft as they approached across the English Channel.
Britain's chain-home radar station network proved critical in directing the RAF pilots who cut down the German raiders.
That was the one technology that completely alleviated the advantage the Germans had with their overwhelming number of aircraft. The Battle of Britain proved to be the pivotal point in the air war, and radar was the key.
To regain supremacy of the skies, the Nazi High Command fantasized about new kinds of fighter bombers built with new German technology.
Officially, the concept was known as a 3x1000. That is, a fighter that could fly 1,000 kilometers an hour over a 1,000-kilometer distance and deliver a 1,000-kilogram bomb on target. It was pushing the limit of any known aviation technology of the day.
Brothers Reimar and Walter Horton had graduated from the Hitler Youth to the Luftwaffe. They were consumed with the idea of creating an aircraft that flew with the elegant efficiency of birds. In the early 1930s, the self-taught designers began building and piloting a series of tailless wooden gliders. They modified their wing around what was then a new innovation, the jet engine. It was a concept that just might have delivered the ultimate attack aircraft their Führer and his henchmen were dreaming of.
Walter and Reimer's brother Wolfram was killed in the Battle of Britain as Wolfram was laying mines along the French coast in Heinkel 111. Walter was still burned with revenge for losing all his friends in the Battle of Britain, so he wanted to go back to England to attack the British chain-home radar network. The Horton 229 was a brainchild of Walter and was generations ahead of any other aircraft developed in the world.
Of all the proposals reviewed by Hermann Göring for his new fighter, only one aircraft met his requirements. It was the radical design submitted by two brothers he'd never heard of.
The flying wing was a radical concept to everyone, including Göring, and the idea that it was made out of wood just added to his skepticism. Walter's so consumed with the passion for this plane that he sort of pulls Göring into the whole idea, saying, we can do it. We can build this from wood. With jet engines, we can make it fly 1,000 kilometers an hour. We can give it a 1,000-kilometer range. We can deliver the payloads you need.
And Göring just said, I'm just astounded by this machine. And the shape, he says, no tail, no elevator. Walter said it's going to be so maneuverable against Allied fighters, Allied bombers. It's going to sweep the skies clean for you.
So Göring is so taken by Walter's vision that he buys in completely to a flying wing.
Göring said, go do this, build it for me and make it fly. The Hortons left the meeting with Goring knowing that they had won the contract to build the 3x1000 flying machine, and now they felt that they had been vindicated.
Fortunately for the free world, time would run out for the loyal Nazi designers. More than half a century later, another Horton 229 model is being put together for the ultimate radar test.
This is going to be a big model, over 50 feet wingspan. We're going to need a lot of wood to build this model. We're trying to build it similar to what they built it back in World War II.
The replica's shape and radar reflectivity must be exactly the same as the original to make the stealth testing valid. Metallic paint will be used instead of real fuel tanks and engine parts.
Just painting the back of the wings, is enough to represent the tanks?
Yeah, because actually at the frequencies and the wavelengths that these radars worked at, they were very long. And this was an aluminum metallic tank, and I think if we paint it with some conductive materials, it'll represent part of the structure of that tank to the radar. We're actually going to be painting in this back area here, and probably we will do some outside painting when the vehicle is fully assembled. Now it's going to be getting it to stay, gluing it.
Inside it. It doesn't want to.
For the Northrop Grumman modeling crew, building a replica Nazi jet fighter is a rare chance to show off their skills. Usually everything that goes on in this workshop is highly classified.
It's nice to have the chance to build these models, and then we see what they look like before they even come into production.
They'll construct the wings in two major sub-assemblies. First, they'll build a long curved leading edge, wrap it in wood, and then bolt it to the main wing panel.
It's being built in about a quarter of the time that a normal RCS model would be built. Usually this is a year effort, and we're doing this in, 3 months?
Give me a nail right here, because I know I'm good here.
I didn't even know there was something this advanced in those days, and I can imagine what it might have done to the war if they would have gotten successful with it.
Hey, ready?
Right now,
Start at the bottom.
Yeah.
Can't let go of this one.
Come around like that.
Keep going down.
A combination of traditional craftsmanship and modern tools will recreate the 1940s flying wing.
We're using foam to manufacture the wingtip of the Horton aircraft. Machining is just a lot easier. So by carefully controlling what kind of paint we put over it, it'll have the same radar reflective properties as the wood that it's mounted onto.
In little more than a week, they glue and nail together the 80 ribs that make up each of the outer wing panels. Rather than rebuild complex parts like the fuel tank, they use metallic paint to recreate an authentic radar signature.
We're simulating what would normally be the fuel tank in the Horton. This is real silver paint. It's silver suspended in a polyurethane coating, and it's rather expensive, about $2,500 a gallon. Okay, that looked like 2 fuel tanks to radar.
Using the same materials that German craftsmen applied more than 68 years before them, the model has covered a Horton 229's wings with a plywood skin.
It's always great to see major sub-assemblies come together.
1, 2, 3.
1 month into the project, the leading edges are complete and ready to be bolted to the outer wing panels.
Down a little bit, push it in.
They also encounter the same woodworking problems the Germans had to overcome.
There's a gap between the pieces because this piece of wood's warped out from the water.
It looks like about a ½ inch.
It's always a little warping, but that's why these guys designed it so they could put a bunch of the fasteners in afterwards and just take care of the warping to get a really good solid assembly.
We're just filling it in with resin and Cavasil, and we're going to put a layer of fiberglass on there. And
To ensure there are no imperfections that could create errant radar reflections, the team spends hours in a cloud of fine dust, painstakingly sanding each wing.
When they're testing the model up on the pole in RCS, they don't like to see any humps or sharp edges at all, or gaps. Anything that it could be a rivet, it could be an edge, it could be anything, they'll get a return, and that's not good.
The Northrop Grumman Company has a long history of building wings. Like the Horton brothers, company founder Jack Northrop was convinced that tailless aircraft would one day revolutionize military aviation. More than a decade before the Nazis began working on their all-wing fighter, back in America, Jack Northrop was already test flying his own wing designs. After the Second World War, the Northrop YB-49 became a lead contender in the race to make America's first intercontinental bomber. Now, decades later, the same company is recreating the flying wing of a former enemy.
Work myself into the model.
With the internal structure of the Horton 229 sensor body assembled, the modelers can start skinning it with plywood.
Good right there. We're using flex board, wood that's not real strong, and the reason we're using it on the leading edge so we can just use the one piece and wrap it around and hold the grip. Extra hand here.
Like the finished outer wing panels, they'll construct the complex shape of the center body mostly out of wood. To ensure the radar test results will be as accurate as possible, the modelers also have to replicate two of the most vulnerable areas on a stealth aircraft: the metal cockpit and inlets. The engine shrouds at the back of the cockpit are also being made out of a modern, more convenient alternative to metal.
On the original plane itself, it was welded steel. This is made out of carbon fiber, which is a lot lighter, easier to lay up, simulates the metal.
To save time, instead of handcrafting complex parts like engine turbine blades, the model makers are using a fantastic plastic crafting instrument known as a sintering machine. It can recreate almost any shape by quickly and efficiently melting thin layers of powdered nylon.
And this type of technology is called additive layer, and what it does is you start out with nothing and you make only what you need. We grow this overnight and it's completely finished. All the holes, everything is there.
The turbine blades are finished and ready to be assembled in less than a day. But for the radar testing to work, they must ensure the nylon and fiberglass parts have the same reflective properties as the original German metal components.
In the area of the inlet, what we end up doing is we take a reflective paint and we coat the outside of the shape so that from the radar standpoint, it doesn't know whether it's a piece of fiberglass underneath or it's a piece of steel or aluminum.
I think in the 40s how the brothers made this canopy, they start off with a flat sheet, and they bend, screw it, heat it up, and just keep bending and forcing.
The 229's cockpit is a big opening, making it vulnerable to radar. Modern stealth aircraft use special coatings on the canopy to prevent electromagnetic energy from entering the cockpit and bouncing back to the radar.
I was thinking it just...
To keep the replica as similar as possible to the original, the team uses 1940s material and techniques to form the cockpit cover. It turns out to be much harder than they thought.
This part and this part.
How do you say 1C3 in German?
we're done. We're going to have to give it another shot. We're going to cut this out so this area is relieved, and then this will lay down a lot better.
After reheating the plexiglass, the team makes a second attempt to shape the canopy in one piece.
Yeah, we lost it. Okay, nice effort. Open the one door. Open the door. We're not going to give up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in two pieces. I'm going to eliminate half the problem.
Meanwhile, the replica's body is being fitted with plastic inlets and nozzles covered in metallic paint.
The radar is coming in this direction because the plane is heading towards the target. So the radar is coming in at this angle, and you have turning fan blades or that reflect the radar. So this is a very vulnerable area on the aircraft for RCS.
Get out of here, Mark. Let's start working on these nozzles and put the foam in them.
Clockwise. Right there. I don't think we need to move it other than to hang it underneath it.
I think we're ready.
The carbon fiber engine shrouds are fitted to both sides of the cockpit. Like the wings, the sensor body is filled and sanded smooth to ensure the shape of the model is as close to the original aircraft as possible. With the outer wing panels attached, the last component of the sensor body is ready for installation.
Yeah, I'm in the home plan.
Meanwhile, the layout and shapes inside the original cockpit have been faithfully replicated, with pieces of plastic plumbing pipe.
Okay. Look at that, man. Having this all correct is really good because it's going to have all the correct surfaces for the radar to come in and reflect off of. So we really have a true representation of the real plane.
With the cockpit and canopy installed, there's one last key job to ensure the plane is ready for radar testing.
This plane is supposed to simulate real metal because we want this to be exactly like the real aircraft was. And right now I'm checking the resistance here of real metal, and then I'm coming over here and comparing that to the metallized area we've painted, and they're identical right now, and that's exactly what we wanted to achieve here.
Although assembly is complete, the team has less than 2 weeks to paint and finish the replica before its radar testing is scheduled to begin. 64 years earlier, the original Horten 229 was being readied for its first test flight at a top-secret hangar inside Nazi Germany. It was mid-1944. Brothers Walter and Weimar Horten were overseeing preparations for the maiden flight on their 229 Batwing fighter. It was supposed to turn the tide of the war back in their beloved Führer's favor. The once mighty Luftwaffe had been emasculated. Allied bombers struck with impunity over the Reich, and on the 6th of June, Hitler suffered another crippling blow as the Allies landed at Normandy. By the autumn of 1944, work on the 229 was nearly complete, when the brothers got word that the Führer was desperate for a new long-range bomber.
Adolf Hitler had a dream of taking the war to the United States and would describe in detail to confidants like Speer how he dreamed of destroying cities like New York, to knock down the skyscrapers, to leave them in flames.
Reimer spent 3 weeks in December of 1944 designing the intercontinental bomber known as the Horten 18. It was going to be an expanded version of the Horten 229.
As the Horten brothers worked in seclusion on Hitler's America bomber, their flying wing fighter was about to make history. A week before Christmas 1944, Luftwaffe test pilot Erwin Ziller watched as ground crews rolled the Batwing fighter from its secret hangar. Although a highly experienced test pilot, he was about to become the first to fly a jet-powered flying wing.
The Horten 229 was generations ahead of any other aircraft developed in the world. And the Horten 229 had to be the most exotic piece of machinery in Germany at that time.
In the chill of a midwinter dawn, Ziller nudged the throttles forward for takeoff.
Flies for the first time. It's vindication and validation for the Hortens. And ironically, the brothers aren't even there to see it. They're busy working round the clock on their design for the America bomber.
In January 1945, Walter Horten returned to Berlin to brief Hermann Goering on the brothers' design for a lethal long-range bomber, the Horten 18.
Walter shows Goering the concept, a bigger version of the 229. 142-foot wingspan, 6 jet engines. Goering is stunned. In their conversations, Goering was very clear to Walter that he needed this new aircraft because by 1946, Germany would have a functioning nuclear weapon.
With the Horten brothers' attention focused on their flying wing bomber, test flights of the 229 jet fighter continued.
Over the following months, Ziller flew the Horten 229 numerous times, and it performed way beyond the Hortens' expectations. In fact, Ziller even flew it in a dogfight against the Messerschmitt Me-262, and it outperformed them in dogfighting ability, maneuverability, and speed.
While the flying wing used the same jet engines as the Me-262, its new propulsion system proved to be fatally unreliable. A test flight in February 1945 would be star pilot Erwin Ziller's last. When the 229's right engine flamed out, he was unable to regain control. His crippled fighter plummeted into the German countryside with the pilot still inside. Exactly 2 months after his historic maiden flight in the 229, Erwin Ziller was dead. More than 64 years on, another Horten 229 is ready to take to the skies. An exact replica of the Nazi original. Although it won't fly, it will make it above the ground for state-of-the-art radar testing to see if the Nazis really did invent stealth technology generations ahead of their time.
Alright, so here it is. It's done. I tell you, you guys gotta be proud of yourselves for what you've done. I mean, this thing looks absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you. We're really proud of it.
The designers of the world's first operational stealth bomber, the B-2, are also anxious to see whether Nazi designers might have beaten them to it decades before.
You did a great job. I tell you what, there's nobody better in this business than you guys.
After working 28 years in the dark, it's nice to spend one day in the light, you know?
You know, most of what we do in here over the years never sees the light of day, you know, but it's nice to let people see what goes on.
You don't get the opportunity to work on something like this with history behind it, and that's what made it a little bit special. The other thing is that it's got my heart and soul in it. There's a lot of me in there. I can't wait to see it up on the pole. I want to see what it can really do. I want to see if it's stealthy. It looks stealthy. Certainly looks stealthy.
Finally now we'll get
some real answers, some real data that will tell us, how stealthy it really was. So that's awesome.
Northrop Grumman's radar test range is hidden away in a remote part of the Mojave Desert. Since the late 1970s, it's been used to measure the stealth capabilities of a huge range of new aircraft designs, many of which are still unseen and remain top secret. Naturally, the stealth test range is usually strictly off limits to visitors, but just this once, codes have been allowed inside for the first time.
These surfaces that we've been working on are going to taste electromagnetic radiation pretty soon. It's the first time radar's going to be shot at this aircraft ever.
Okay, stop.
Man, the day we've been waiting for. Great weather. Can't beat this.
I've moved a lot of stuff, but never moved a German stealth fighter before. Yeah, we're good.
Awesome. This is the first time we're actually getting a feel for what it looks like, as if it was flying.
As the Model 229 doesn't have real jet engines, a hoist is used to launch it up to the 5-story high radar testing platform.
I'm just at a loss for words. This looks so cool. It just changes the whole perspective to see it that far away and up in the air.
Like all potentially stealthy designs, the test range crews have to take great care not to damage the model. Any nicks or scrapes will spoil the accuracy of the radar results.
It's great up there. Oh, it does.
As far as stealth characteristics and everything, we always, as an American, I feel like that's our deal, We're doing the stealth stuff. Never had any idea that the Germans were doing a wing back in the 40s.
It looks great. It really does.
Time for the moment of truth.
6 decades after the Horton fighter's first flight, the true extent of its stealth capability is about to be tested at last. Deep inside a secure control room in a remote Californian desert, the company behind the modern stealth bomber is about to do something the Nazis never did.
Hey guys.
Test the stealth of the radically advanced World War II German Horton flying wing. An exact replica will be hit by radar signals from every angle to find out if its original German designers were really trying to slip through Allied radar.
We're doing pretty much level and nose on the first set of spins. Each rotation does a frequency band. We're doing VHF, UHF, and L band.
This wide range of frequencies will give the test team a better idea of the fighter's radar cross-section.
So we want to make sure that we get enough of that data in order to characterize in each one of those systems how the vehicle performed.
Okay, we're starting our next spin now.
At this frequency, you can tend to see a lot more of the characteristics of the inlets and the canopy area up in the front of the vehicle. The inlets specifically, where energy is going down and hitting the front of the engine frames is showing up, and the bow frame and the canopy, and just energy that's getting into the cockpit area and rattling around itself.
The test is designed to see if the Nazi fighter could have penetrated the Second World War era radar array along the British coast, known as the Chain Home System.
And I'll be really fascinated to see how, after we process the data and get some numbers, what the performance of this aircraft really would have been like against the Chain Home radar system.
Yeah, we have to do a lot of post-processing in order to get the actual numbers that we can use for comparison against the fighters and bombers of the day.
We're ready to go.
47 and number 7.
The simulated raid on wartime Britain will be conducted with real-time accuracy inside this advanced air combat facility.
Altitude 22,000 feet.
All groups are reporting good, squadron.
Normally used to test high-tech 21st century aerospace innovations, the clock is about to be wound back to 1944.
All systems are reconfigured and we have been running.
Veteran test pilot Paul T.P. Smith will be at the controls of the virtual Horton 229. A vast change from his usual test flights, including America's latest stealth fighter, the F-35.
Roger, I've got altitude 20,000 feet, 600 knots.
TP will make his virtual attack from a range of altitudes. His target, a chain-home radar station.
Detectors.
In the Battle of Britain, chain-home radar system, the low system, had a range of about 100 to 110 miles, which could see across the channel and into France. They could see the German fighters marshalling before they ever crossed the channel.
To help reduce their detection range, German aircraft began flying across the English Channel at altitudes as low as 50 feet. But by early 1945, Allied aircraft ruled the skies at any altitude. By mid-April, the ground forces were also closing in. American troops were marching on the Special, or Sonderkommando 9 Experimental Aviation Unit. Although a second Tu-29 fighter was almost complete, the Horton brothers fled, forced to abandon their dream of arming the Luftwaffe with jet-wing fighters and long-range bombers. 63 years after the only surviving Horton Tu-29 was captured and shipped back to the United States, the Batwing fighter is about to reveal its secrets.
Is that the canopy there in the center that's lighting up, or is that just a blending from the inlets?
Well, it's probably a combination of both. Again, when you get down to these type of wavelengths, a lot of the scattering elements tend to blend together. So you can see that the nose, the inlets, that canopy areas, that's where a major part of the radar reflection's coming from.
It looks like with all the data that this aircraft would have made a major difference.
All about a 20% reduction in the actual detection range.
Once detected by radar, a conventional fighter of the time took around 19 minutes to reach the target. But with its superior stealth and speed, the Horton Tu-29 could cover the same distance in less than 8 minutes.
While the Horton's advantage in detection range is on the order of 20%, the combination of speed and stealth was absolutely lethal. But even if you did detect it, it was so fast it would have been extremely difficult for any of the Allied fighters at the time to have been able to catch it.
You can imagine the amount of improvement that the Horton Tu-29 could have given to the German warfighter. I surely wouldn't want to have been the Allied forces.
Had the Tu-29 adopted the low-level tactics employed by the Luftwaffe, the results could have been devastating.
When you're flying at 50 feet, traveling at around 600 miles an hour, plus the reduction in the detection range, now you've got only 2.5 minutes of reaction time for the Allies to know you were coming.
Looking at it, your response time then with low altitude, when you only have 24 miles, that's 2.5 minutes. You just don't have the time to respond.
You could keep them from seeing you and getting their defensive systems up. You create such an element of surprise. You can now basically roam at will and attack the targets that you want to.
aircraft design predates modern stealth technology by more than 3 decades. If the Germans had deployed it in great numbers, it would have been a game changer.
After decades of speculation and debate, state-of-the-art testing has proven the effectiveness of Nazi Germany's stealth fighter. But the Tu-29 wasn't the Horten brothers' only design terrifyingly ahead of its time. Had the ingenious Nazis completed their long-range bomber, the world may have been a very different place.
The characteristics and things that we saw on the Horten Tu-29 would translate directly to the Horten 18, which was the larger version of the Horten Tu-29.
Göring was very clear that by 1946 they would have a nuclear bomb, and the Horten 18 would be used to deliver that bomb on an American city like New York or Washington.
Even if you managed to detect a Horten 18 bomber approaching the east coast of the United States, you probably would have only had about 8 minutes of warning time, which would have been totally inadequate to mount any kind of defense against it.
While the stealth-flying wing made a lethal fighter, its use as a long-range bomber would have been catastrophic.
It's a terrifying thought in a lot of ways, because if the Third Reich was able to use them operationally before the Allies understood they were there, those first few strikes with those airplanes could have been devastating.
Don't miss brand new Engineering Connections and Megastructures on Thursday from 9. Next, how Hitler planned